At 9:47 in the morning on June 6, 1944, a Mustang lifted from an airfield in England and headed toward Normandy. The invasion had already begun, and Allied aircraft were forming a protective barrier over the beaches. The pilot, Lieutenant Thomas Fraser, belonged to an escort squadron responsible for shielding an entire bomber formation. He had flown missions before, but on this day, everything would unfold in a way no one expected. His aircraft, a long-range P-51B powered by a Packard-built Merlin engine, had proven itself countless times in combat. Yet engines under pressure have no sense of timing, and what began as a routine escort soon became one of the most valuable captures the Luftwaffe ever made. As the bombers continued eastward, Fraser noticed a sudden change on his engine gauges. Oil pressure dipped, coolant temperature climbed, and the smooth hum of the Merlin turned into a rough vibration. He could smell hot coolant inside the cockpit, the unmistakable scent of a leak somewhere inside the aircraft. The Mustang was a deadly machine, but it was also liquid-cooled, and a single puncture could turn precision engineering into a runaway furnace. Fraser reduced power, checked his gauges again, and radioed his squadron leader. He needed to break formation. Every second meant more heat, more stress, and more risk that the engine would seize permanently. Under him stretched miles of German-occupied countryside, full of soldiers, checkpoints, and patrols. There was no safe escape, only a desperate attempt to survive a forced landing before the engine gave out completely. He spotted a narrow field and lowered his gear. The landing had to be gentle, because if the propeller hit the ground, the aircraft would be lost forever. With a smooth pullback on the stick, he touched down and let the Mustang glide over uneven grass. The airframe held together, the landing gear stayed straight, and the long nose finally settled. Fraser climbed out, unhurt and alone, and started walking in hopes of avoiding capture. Unfortunately, German patrols in Normandy were everywhere that morning. Only hours later, soldiers surrounded him and took him into custody. What Fraser could not know was that his Mustang was still fully intact, and German recovery teams, trained specifically to salvage Allied aircraft before they could be destroyed, were already moving toward the location. The Luftwaffe had entire units dedicated to retrieving Allied fighters that landed mostly intact. These teams worked with astonishing speed, draining fuel, disconnecting batteries, securing the cockpit, and guarding the aircraft until transport arrived. Within a single night, a heavy trailer backed into the field and carried the Mustang away. By dawn, it was on a train to Rechnlin, the most important aircraft testing center in Germany. Rechnlin had been operating since the mid-1930s and tested virtually every German aircraft designed before production. But captured enemy aircraft were even more valuable because they provided real performance data without guesswork. Fraser's Mustang would soon become one of the most important American fighters the Germans ever studied. At Rechnlin, mechanics surrounded the Mustang immediately. The damage was limited to a minor coolant leak. With tools and spare parts from captured stockpiles, they repaired it, repainted the underside in bright yellow markings to prevent friendly anti-aircraft crews from shooting it down, and assigned it a German identification code. The aircraft now looked strange, still American in design, but decorated with German symbols and a sharp contrast of colors. Normally, captured aircraft went through lengthy inspection periods, but the Luftwaffe needed answers quickly. German pilots were being overwhelmed by American long-range escorts, and no one fully understood why this new fighter seemed faster, more agile, and more capable than what they had seen earlier in the war. They needed a pilot who could understand every detail of its behavior, even without manuals or training. Hans-Werner Lerche walked toward the Mustang on June 10th. At only 30 years old, he had flown more than 120 types of aircraft: German, British, Italian, Soviet, and American. Lerche was an engineer as well as a test pilot, which made him uniquely qualified to interpret performance beyond numbers. If he could start the engine, take off, and survive, he could evaluate everything from stall characteristics to fuel stability to control harmony. He had flown Spitfires, Thunderbolts, Lightnings, and a variety of bombers. His ability to fly unfamiliar aircraft without written procedures was legendary inside the Luftwaffe. If anyone could learn the Mustang's secrets, it was him. The cockpit inspection impressed him immediately. The Mustang's controls were arranged logically, with gauges clearly grouped by function. Visibility was strong, and control surfaces responded smoothly to pre-flight checks. He noticed the laminated flow wing design that reduced drag at high speed, something German fighters had not fully matched in structural efficiency. When the engine finally started, its tone was unlike German power plants, smooth, high-pitched, and refined. After waiting for temperatures to stabilize, he lined up on the runway and slowly advanced the throttle. The acceleration shocked him. The Mustang responded instantly, lifting off at a surprisingly low speed and climbing with strength he did not expect from a single-engine escort fighter. At altitude, Lerche tested the controls. The ailerons were astonishingly light, offering roll rates far faster than the Bf-109 or Fw-190, where German fighters required muscular control inputs at high speeds. The Mustang remained crisp and responsive. Stall behavior was gentle and predictable, allowing aggressive turns without sudden loss of control. In a steep dive, the aircraft passed 450 miles per hour without dangerous instability. At cruising altitude, Lerche recorded true airspeeds over 410 miles per hour and noted that the Mustang was even faster than German estimates had suggested. The aircraft could fight aggressively without acting viciously toward its pilot, a combination rarely seen in World War II fighter design. He recognized that this trait alone could allow less experienced Allied pilots to fly more confidently and survive more engagements. Lerche's report reached command levels quickly. The message was simple. The Mustang was not just competitive, it was dangerously authoritative in the hands of a capable pilot. Only the newest German designs could challenge it, and even then the advantage was uncertain. The Mustang accelerated strongly, turned tightly, clawed upward through climbs, and dove like a rocket while maintaining stability. The only real weakness was its liquid-cooled engine, which could fail if coolant lines were damaged, but in practical combat terms that vulnerability mattered less than overall dominance. When Lerche landed after his first flight, ground crews asked for his reaction. His 5 words summarized everything. It is a truly unique aircraft. Word spread across the Luftwaffe quickly. Many pilots still believed German fighters were superior because for years they had been. Early war technological advantage made German designs feel untouchable. But by 1944, the Mustang overturned that confidence. To demonstrate the truth, German commanders organized live training with captured Allied fighters, including the Mustang. Pilots watched mock dogfights where the Mustang rolled inside a Bf-109's turn, outran a Fw-190 in level flight, and maneuvered so smoothly that veteran flyers immediately understood the danger. Some pilots admitted privately that they wanted no part of a turning fight with a skilled Mustang pilot because the aircraft could stay in the engagement far longer than expected. The psychological shift was enormous. Before the Mustang, German forces could rely on superior altitude performance and tighter striking power. But the Mustang had the one attribute most German fighters lacked: overwhelming range. A Mustang pilot could escort bombers into Germany, shoot down interceptors, and still have enough fuel to chase survivors home. German pilots now faced the terrifying possibility that there was no safe escape. If they disengaged, Mustangs would dive behind them. If they attempted to land, Mustangs would follow and strafe airfields. The struggle for air superiority became relentless because Allied pilots could hunt freely, not merely defend. By mid-1944, American strategy shifted from bomber protection to hunting German fighters wherever they took off. If a German pilot attacked a bomber formation, Mustangs countered aggressively and pursued until fuel or distance forced surrender. This new battlefield environment devastated the Luftwaffe. Germany could still produce aircraft, but it could not replace skilled pilots fast enough. The Mustang tipped the balance not simply by technology, but by sustaining long operations that exhausted German defenses. As fuel shortages deepened, many German aircraft remained grounded, and replacements often entered combat with only minimal training. The air war now belonged to pilots who could stay aloft longer, fight farther from base, and re-enter combat multiple times during a single mission. Losses escalated uncontrollably. Mustang pilots achieved kill ratios that earlier Allied aircraft could never approach. Experienced German aces disappeared, and their successors lacked the flying hours necessary to survive prolonged engagements. In a matter of months, the Luftwaffe transitioned from imposing threat to crumbling resistance. Germany's own intelligence teams documented the Mustang's impact and acknowledged its strategic significance. They could analyze wing profiles, fuel systems, and engine characteristics, but they could not replicate production scale or pilot training. Even if German engineers improved designs, there was no time, fuel, or manpower to reverse the outcome. When Germany finally surrendered, Hans-Werner Lerche was interrogated by Allied officers. He praised the Mustang openly, describing it as one of the finest aircraft he had ever flown. Fraser, meanwhile, had no idea that his emergency landing created one of the most valuable intelligence gifts the Germans ever received. He only learned later that his Mustang trained German pilots and influenced Luftwaffe tactical awareness. The aircraft itself disappeared in late 1944, but its contribution to German understanding remained undeniable. The Mustang changed the war because it blended speed, stability, and massive operational range into one package. Engineering excellence shaped outcomes far more than propaganda ever could. When a fighter could escort bombers into the heart of Germany, fight on equal terms against interceptors, and return home safely, air combat was transformed. The Mustang was not flawless, but it was effective in every role that mattered when victory was on the line. Even German officers admitted, sometimes reluctantly, that the moment Mustangs appeared over Berlin, the war could not be won. That realization was not emotional, it was mathematical. With skies controlled, Germany had no way to defend production, refineries, infrastructure, or transportation networks. Aircraft that could fight everywhere altered everything, and the Mustang represented exactly that capability.